In the 1500s, love could be a death sentence. Being gay wasn't just taboo. It was literally a crime that could get you tortured or burned alive. Churches controlled every aspect of life. Courts handed down brutal sentences. And prisons? They were filled with people whose only crime was who they loved. So what actually happened if you were gay back then? Stick around, because this story is darker than you think. Let's set the scene. The 1500s were dominated by the Catholic Church, and they had one thing to say about homosexuality. It was an abomination. Sodomy laws were everywhere. England, France, Spain, Italy, you name it. And these weren't just religious rules, they were actual laws enforced by the state. Being gay was lumped in with heresy, witchcraft, and moral corruption. It wasn't seen as just different. It was seen as evil, a threat to society itself. And the punishments? Absolutely brutal. Fines if you were lucky. Exile, flogging, public humiliation, or execution. Burned at the stake, hanged, drowned. This wasn't some distant threat. This was reality for thousands of people. Now imagine living with that hanging over your head every single day. You couldn't just be yourself. You couldn't hold someone's hand. You couldn't even look at someone the wrong way without risking everything. So people lived double lives. Men married women they didn't love, just to keep up appearances. Women were forced into marriages to hide who they really were. And any real relationship, that happened in the shadows. Late at night, behind closed doors, in constant fear, because even a rumor could destroy you. You didn't have to be caught in the act. Someone just had to suspect you, and that was enough. Your reputation? Gone. Your livelihood? Gone. Your life? Possibly over. In Spain, the Inquisition interrogated men accused of sodomy, torturing them until they confessed, whether they were guilty or not. Women accused of unnatural love faced similar fates. It didn't matter if you were innocent. Suspicion alone was deadly. So let's talk about what actually happened if you got caught. First, imprisonment. You'd be thrown into a dark, filthy cell with no trial, no lawyer, no way out. Torture was common, designed to extract confessions or just to punish you for existing. Then there was public humiliation. You'd be paraded through the streets, mocked, spat on, beaten by crowds who saw you as less than human. Exile was another option. Banished from your home, your family, everything you knew, left to wander with nothing. But in many places, the punishment was death. Burning at the stake was the most common method in Catholic regions. Hanging in England, drowning in some German states. The severity depended on where you were. Italy might be slightly more lenient in certain cities, while Spain was absolutely ruthless. England had the death penalty on the books, though enforcement varied. One thing was clear, though. If you were poor, you were done for. The rich? They had options. Florence, Italy, was notorious for sodomy trials. The city actually had a special court just for these cases. Thousands of men were accused over the decades. Some were fined, some were exiled, some were executed. But here's the thing. If you had money or power, you could often buy your way out. Pay a fine, call in a favor, and suddenly the charges disappear. But if you were a peasant, a laborer, someone with no connections, you were made an example of, publicly executed to scare everyone else into obedience. Even kings and nobles were whispered about. Rumors swirled around certain royals and powerful men. But they were untouchable. The poor, though, they paid the price for everyone. Now let's talk about women, because their situation was just as dangerous, but in different ways. Lesbian relationships were absolutely criminalized, though the laws were often less explicit. Why? Because in a patriarchal society, women's sexuality was largely invisible to male lawmakers. They didn't even think women could have those kinds of relationships. But when women were caught, the punishment was real. Some were accused of witchcraft. Others were forced into marriages or sent to convents. In extreme cases, they faced execution just like men. The historical records are sparse, because women's lives were documented far less than men's. But that doesn't mean they were safe. Lesbian love existed in the shadows, and when it was discovered, the consequences were brutal. So how did people survive? by being incredibly careful. Secret meeting spots were everything. Certain taverns, bathhouses, private homes of sympathetic friends. These became safe havens, places where you could drop the mask even if just for a few hours. There were hidden symbols, coded language, ways of signaling to each other without saying a word. A certain look, a certain phrase, a certain gesture. You had to know who you could trust. Some wealthy patrons, nobles or merchants, would protect lovers in exchange for loyalty or service. It wasn't about kindness, it was transactional. But it kept people alive. These underground friendship circles were lifelines. Small, secretive, always at risk of being discovered. But for many, they were the only way to experience any kind of authentic connection. Let's step back for a second and take in the full picture. Life as a gay person in the 1500s was absolutely terrifying. Every day was a gamble. Every relationship was a risk. Loneliness was constant because even in a crowded room you were isolated. This wasn't about romance. This wasn't about living your truth. This was about survival. Hiding who you were wasn't a choice, it was the only option. And for so many, even that wasn't enough. So yeah, being gay in the 1500s absolutely sucked. Love was a risk, and secrecy was the only way to survive. If you found this video eye-opening, hit that like button and subscribe, because history gets even darker. Next time, we're diving into what happened to people accused of witchcraft. And trust me, you won't believe how insane it gets. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.